Last week, so we've been talking about love for the last 5 weeks. We looked at 1 Corinthians 13, and we looked extensively at the characteristics or the character of love. We looked at how we can apply that in our lives. And last week we talked about, over this week and last week, we're talking about relationships. And I really wanted to drill down and give you practical applications in your relationships, and trust that if you engage with these principles, these proven techniques and biblical techniques to engage in relationships, especially the ones that are the most precious to you, that you'll have a better relationship. You'll grow in good ways together, and your bond will be even stronger. So last week, the homework assignment last week was a 5-to-1 ratio. I don't know if you tried that. If you did, you're happier this morning than you were last week. 5-to-1 ratio, 5 good things to 1 bad thing. Sometimes in our relationships we get inverted, where we're talking to our spouse and it's always, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need, and it's negative, negative, negative. With our children, it's negative, negative, negative. So the idea was to spin that and to just be positive as much as you could be. So this week, and in the sermon, we talked about primarily the centerpiece of all of our relationships is God. We talked about the cross and how there's a vertical relationship that we have with God, and there's a horizontal relationship that we have with the people around us. And it's that vertical post that's centered and firm in the ground. And when we have God as that piece in our lives, then the horizontal relationships can be where they should be. But if you take that center post out, our relationships are weak and flimsy, and they fall to the ground often. So God needs to be at the centerpiece of all of our relationships. And we talked a little bit about love and respect, and that's super important in our relationships, but God being the center was really the focal point last week. This week I want to give you some really practical things to work through in your relationships, and I have notes this morning. And it's never good when I have notes, because that means that I'm having trouble internalizing the material. And I think primarily it's because to preach this morning creates this dynamic for me with you, where I'm a little bit more vulnerable than I like being, and I'm comfortable being. And it also is a recognition that many of you could preach this sermon a lot better than me, because I've been married 21 years, going on 22. Some of you have been married a lot more than twice that, and you have great relationships with your spouse, and I'm so appreciative of that. And it puts me in this awkward position because I know you could teach me a lot. So I'm going to give you what I have. I'm going to try and not rely on my notes. I'm going to try and keep you engaged as much as possible. Hopefully you'll get something good out of it. I think the reason I chose this scripture this morning is because when God is at the centerpiece of our relationships, God has a vision for us, and He brings us together, whether it's with a spouse or a best friend or, it's with a parent, right? God gave me life through my parents, so they're in my life for a reason. And I have kids that God blessed me with and challenges me with. But they're in my life for a reason. And as long as God is at the center point, as long as God is in the center place of that relationship, and God is number one in my life, then God is moving me through life to God's vision for my life in that relationship. You follow me? So here's the thing. Sometimes I don't want to do what I know I need to do. Have you ever been there? Sometimes I love my wife. But I'll tell you, there are times in my relationship where I don't want to give up ground on an argument. And sometimes to make my argument stronger, I dig up stuff from years ago. Yeah? You've never done that, I know. You're laughing because you've all been on the receiving end of that, right? So here's the thing. If God is at the center point, and God's vision for that relationship is to grow closer and closer together, and I start to get stubborn because maybe I'm expecting Denise to meet the needs in my life that only God can meet because God isn't at the center. I've kind of pushed God to the side. Or maybe it's my own junk, my own pride, my own sin that's causing me to dig my heels in. You know? And those, I'm giving you the Christianese, right? The Christian talk. The reality is it's that I just think I'm right and she's wrong. And she needs to bend to my will because I'm right and she's wrong. And if I really want to push my luck, I quote the scripture from last week, Ephesians 5:23, and say, listen, the Bible says the man is the head of the woman, right? You know? Wouldn't you love to be married to me? If God's at the center of our marriages, if God's at the center of that dating relationship where you think you know like this is the one or I hope this is the one, you know, like if God is at the center of it and it's getting askew, it's going kind of off one way or the other, God loves you so much and he loves your marriage so much that you might be subject to a little bit of pushing in a direction that you might not want to go by God. The scripture this morning says that God is the one who has torn us to pieces, and God is the one who shreds us, but he will rebuild us. As sure as the sun rises and the spring rains come, to bring new life, he will build us back up. Relationships are hard, especially when they last years or decades. It's not always easy. But if you have God at the center, even in those tough times, God, in his loving way, is moving you through. My dad was a Vietnam vet. He was a U.S. Marine Corps soldier, and he used to tell us when we were kids about boot camp. He said, boot camp. The point of boot camp was to tear you down, only to build you up better. Sometimes God puts us through boot camp to build us down, to tear us down, to build us back up. And it works in our relationships. And if he's at the center, you can trust that it's good. So here's the practical stuff. Do you have a vision for your relationship? When I met Denise, I had this vision, and it evolved over time. And as we got closer, we changed and we grew together and we grew closer together, and it was wonderful. And we ended up deciding to engage in the grand vision. building our lives together with God at the center. There have been times over the years where I've had to come back to that vision and appreciate the things that I loved and drew me to her in the past, and looked for a vision for the future. You know, sometimes the vision is to get married, and you get married. And then the vision might be to have children, and then you have children. And then the vision is just to survive it. And you survive it. And then you're empty nesters. And then the vision is to rediscover. You know, I don't know. And I'm not at that point yet. I'm praying for that day, but I'm not at that point yet. And then you know, retirement. And then you know, so there's vision after vision after vision, and some of them are natural processes of life in relationship, and then some of them might not be so natural. It might be that the vision that you thought you were on with the person you're in a relationship with isn't the same vision that they have. And you find out that you haven't talked about vision and where you're going for years. And now you're not this far apart, you're this far apart. And in order to get back, it's going to take a lot of work. And it's hard. But you can do it with God at the center. So the first part is, who are you in this relationship, right? Are you prideful? Are you stubborn? Are you generous and kind? Like, what are your gifts? What are you good at? Because we're just broken people, right? If you're here this morning, I'm here this morning because I'm broken. And the only way I get through my week and my days is knowing that I have a Lord and Savior who forgives me for my brokenness and builds me up in ways that just keeps me going. There are days that depresses me, and there are days that I'm encouraged because God is so good. But it's the good and the bad in each of us that God puts together. My wife and I, we did premarital counseling with a United Methodist pastor who was a psychologist at the same time. Maybe I needed a psychiatrist. But we did this 16 PF. It's a personality inventory. Have you ever done one of those? They're a lot of fun. It's almost like a horoscope, right? It tells you who you are and what you're good at and all that stuff. Well, it was this, there were bar lines on either side. And Denise and I were like exactly opposite on just about everything. And, 22 years ago, that was really appealing. And the premarital counselor was like, "This is great. You guys together, you're the whole package. It's like exactly what God intended." And then as we started to live our lives together, I want to do this, and she wants to do that. If you listening is a huge thing, right? Have you ever read Mars and Venus, like men are from Mars and women are from Venus? Or maybe you've heard of hunter and gatherers, right? Men are the hunters and women are the gatherers. And we communicate differently because of evolutionary processes, hunter and gatherer things. And Mars and Venus, we just live on different planets, right? And then the Christian bestseller a few years ago, The 5 Languages of Love, talks about how difficult it is to communicate between men and women just because we're different. But listening is really important. You have to be able to listen. When I started dating Denise, I love to listen to her. 10 years of marriage goes by with a couple of kids. And then I start finding out that I've started filtering out what she's saying and how she's communicating it to me because I don't have time for it, or I have a different agenda, or I've heard it all before. And that's tough. It's tough for her. And it's even tougher on the relationship because God has brought us together to be one. And because of my actions, we're two. So I want to encourage you to listen. Take some time. And again, this works with friends. Like, listen. Listen deeply. Have a vision and realize that the vision changes over time and you need to communicate that. Take some time. Do it. Do you ever do date nights? You should do date nights. If you don't do date nights, do date nights. I don't do enough of the date nights. My date nights turn into administration nights. Administration nights are, let's go out to dinner and talk about what we need to do. And then, what do we need to do? Well, we have one kid doing this and one kid doing that, and it's calendaring and scheduling, and you need to do this, and the laundry's not getting done, and the dishes, and who's cooking, and all that's important. But date nights are to celebrate, to have fun. Schedule time for administration, but don't let it creep into your date nights. So have a vision and work on it. Listen to the people around you who are closest to you. One of the biggest challenges for me having preteens and teens is that they're changing incredibly all the time. And they're so impacted by people around them and the environments they're in that their communication changes. I bust my kids' chops. I tell them I'm sipping the tea so I can be woke. You all didn't get that, did you? Ask a teenager. I probably got it all wrong, they'll tell you. There's communication things that require us to listen in different ways as people change over time so that we can be attentive to them and in tune with them and love them the way that we're supposed to love them. Okay, so now I need my notes. So it's vision, it's listening, it's knowing who you are, both the good and the bad in the relationship. Being able to let go of your pride, to own your stuff. Last week we talked a little bit about owning your stuff, right? Own the good and the bad in you. And be together working and encouraging one another to move in a better way together. The last thing I want to share with you, it's really important. This one isn't even a business principle, so if you're a business person, it works. Always come back to vision. Always come back to vision. Our lives are rhythms, and we have a vision, and we grow it, and then we plateau on it. And then if we don't go back to vision, then we start to die in the process. Come back to vision. Where are we going, sweetie? Where are we going, honey? What are we doing? I love you so much. How is God calling us to this? Let's pray together. One of the most powerful and yet intimidating things is praying with your spouse on a regular basis. It's hard. If you're doing it, awesome. Being a congregation, being a church, if you're doing it, teach somebody else to do it. Bless them that way. Here, I forgot. This is my cute illustration so you can remember, right? These are my keys. These aren't my keys. These are the keys that are on my key ring. Do you have like a key rack? We have a key rack at our house, and we hang our keys. I have regular keys that I use. I have a car key, a front door key, a back door key. I know what those keys are. But I've been given these keys over time, and they're really important, but I don't ever use them, so I don't remember what they are. Some of them are labeled like smart manufacturers, like put little things on them, so like if you don't take this, and I'm a minimalist, so a lot of times I take these off, and then it makes it even worse. Maybe you're really organized and you have a bunch of keys and you label them all. I didn't label a lot of these. So the point was that some of the things that I'm talking about this morning are keys to good relationships that you use all the time, and you know them and you do them well. Maybe you're a great listener. Maybe you're a vision person where you're praying for vision for your family and for your life and for God and to work in it, and that's awesome. But then there are probably some things that I'm going to talk about this morning, that I talked about this morning, that are really important keys to relationships, but you don't remember what they do, or you haven't used them in so long that you know that they're important, but you're just not engaging with them. And I want to encourage you to engage with all of these. That worked. Hopefully you'll remember it, right? Go back to vision. It's really important. If you haven't talked to your spouse about where are we right now and where is God calling us, I want to really encourage you to do that this week. Schedule time, schedule alone time, pray about it ahead of time, and go out to dinner and have a great time talking about where God is calling you and how that's going to rekindle all kinds of excitement and joy in your life. Because if God is at the center, even if things have to be torn down to be built back up, it's all good.